I'm going to throw you a bunch at you all. I'll give you a little physiology, but more so, it's way too many years, decades of spending too much time in the summer of Houston, Texas. So, first off, I think this is what I would tell all my high school and college kids when I coach. Number one, you have to understand it's going to suck, especially if you have humidity. There is no escaping it. There's no waking up at 4 a.m. and getting it done before it gets hot. It's just normal. You got to accept it. Okay. The other thing you have to realize is it takes time to adapt. When it starts getting hot, is a lot of times you're going to feel miserable for sometimes a couple weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. I would tell my athletes, this is what I'd call like the death period, where you get out the door and from step one, you're just trudging along because like it is miserable. And you're just thinking, am I overtraining? Am I going to die? Like, what am I doing? I tell people, forget about the pace, just trudge through. And then within 2 to 3 weeks, one day you're going to get out there and you're going to be like, this sucks, but it's manageable. It's not as bad. So it takes time to adapt. So keep that mindset, number one. I think the other things that are really, really important um, is that, some simple things. Slow down, ditch your watch, go by effort. Okay. Why? Because we know because of the heat, humidity causing your core body temperature to rise, you're going to fatigue sooner and things are going to feel harder. Sometimes by a huge amount. I'm talking like, 30 seconds plus per mile, depending on the heat. So sometimes it's a big drastic effect. So the worst thing that can happen is you look down at your watch and you say, normally I run 8-minute miles and I'm running 9:30 miles. Like I'm out of shape. No, the heat and humidity are doing its job. So if the watch is bothering you, if you're seeing those splits and you're saying, oh my God, what am I doing? Throw it away or go by total time. Say instead of a 5-mile run, I'm going to go for 45 minutes and just go by time. Forget the splits, forget the pace, all of that stuff. I think that's number one. Number two, and this is like sacrilegious in running world, but take some breaks. Okay. Stop to get water. Stop at the water fountain to dunk your head. If you were like me as a teenager, maybe I shouldn't suggest this, but go to the neighbor's yard and dip your head in their hose or sprinkler, right? Because like that helps, right? Because the core body temperature just continues to rise. The perception of effort goes up. A brief break, some splashing your face with water, dumping water on your head, taking some sips, that helps a ton. So think about your route and how you do this. Even in Houston, when I was training a lot in Houston, Texas, my long runs in the summer, they would be strategically timed to go to the parks and hit the water fountains or the vending machines with Gatorades at the right time when I knew I was kind of dying at some point. You take a couple minute break, it re-energizes you. So don't feel bad about that. I mentioned it there, but pools, water, all that is your friends. I had a high school coaching friend who in the summer with his high school coaching kids, they'd organize a run through the neighborhood to each kid's pool. You'd run to the house, jump in, jump out, run to the next pool. Of course, we have more pools in Houston than other areas, but you could do the same thing with water fountains, sprinklers, whatever you call it. Water is your friend. A couple other tips, just going to keep rattling, is one thing that I've seen help is wearing a hat and dipping it in cold water before, or even some people put it in the freezer for a little bit. Cools core temperature down. And guess what? When you stop for that water fountain, you soak that hat, put it back on, makes you feel a little bit better, right? Because it helps with the perception of effort. You don't feel death because it's a little bit of a cooling effect. I think the other thing that really matters here is be very careful on anything hard or intense or long. So the stuff that causes you to dig into the well, it is so much easier to dig into the well, overtrain, overexhaust yourself with the heat and humidity because you're not just battling the normal aspects of fatigue. You've added, as I said, core body temperature rising, which eventually will shut us down. Our brains will go, "Hey, this engine is running too hot. Stop." So you're battling more issues of fatigue. So when we look at the hard stuff, right? Change it. As I said, go by effort, decrease the total time or volume a little bit, slow down the pace a little bit, give yourself a little bit more rest in intervals. And I would also say, like, do fewer hard workouts, in a period. If you're used to doing 2 per week in the summer, maybe go down to 1, right? Um it's just modulating things because again, what matters is total stress load. And if we've added the external stress load of heat, humidity, like we do the same training, we're gonna overtrain. So those I think are the keys that come to my mind, Clay. Did I miss anything or any other questions there?
If you did, I wouldn't know about it. You got like 9 in there, so that was great.
Oh, I'll
And
give
man,
you I'll give you one
yeah,
more off the top of my head here is once you finally get a cool day, take advantage of it. So the best
mm,
trick, this is my best coaching trick, so get ready for it, is after going through a summer of heat and humidity, even if training went well, people think they're slow because the heat and humidity slows your times down so much. Whenever that first cool day hits, go to a measured course, whether you love mile repeats or a 5-mile tempo, do something hard because all of a sudden, just thanks to the cool weather, you're going to run a lot faster than you have recently. And you're gonna see that, and you're gonna be like, "Holy crap, I'm in a lot better shape than I thought." So, like, take advantage of that first cool day once you come off the heat humidity.
um, this is great. I needed you yesterday, Steve. I went out for my long run, and I don't know why, but I just decided I was gonna try to make it a little more challenging, and I was dead from the jump. I went out at like 11:30. It was humid, hot, and I was trying to run like my usual threshold pace. Why I was doing threshold long run, I don't know. I got mad. I punched my Garmin at one point. It all devolved from there. So I really needed you on that run yesterday. But it's even though I know these things, and even though I know like go by RP, it can be hard and frustrating the first time you have a really hot day. It's humbling. Your ego can kind of get in the way, and you think, well, why can't I run my usual paces? At least that's the case with me. I don't know if that's the case with other people as well, but
It's the same with me, and I'll give you 2 tips here, is have a backup old school, Timex that has no GPS to use on hot days. And then the second one is go to the trails, right? Because, like, in the trails, your GPS watch often goes to shit anyway because, so many turns or what have you. So you're used to seeing slow paces. Go to the trails on hot days, you get some shade, and you stop obsessing about the watch.
two quick questions for you, follow-ups. One is, do you change anything about, like or do you coach athletes to change anything about fueling or hydration on hot days? And the other one is, like, is there a specific timetable? I know you said ditch the watch, so maybe I'm going against that, but, like, is there a specific, "Oh, you add 30 seconds," or "You add 45 seconds when it's 10 degrees hotter," or is I assume that's not an exact science, but I've seen people say that, so I'm curious what your take is to those things.
There's all sorts of calculators that will give you approximation, but the reality is it depends on the heat and humidity combo and you as a runner. So we know, for example, bigger athletes don't dissipate heat as well, right? Um, so they're gonna struggle a little bit more, and we know that there's individual variation that has nothing to do with size of the athlete. So and if you're acclimated or not, we know that acclimation plays a big role here. So if it's your first hot day versus if it's you have spent an eternity in it, like I have. So all of those play into a factor. So I wouldn't necessarily, use any calculator. Over time, you'll figure it out. But I would just kind of ditch the watch, or what I would often do is, if I had to do a tempo run or something like that, I'd run my first mile at the appropriate effort without looking at my watch. hit the split button, see what it was, and be like, "Oh, okay, this is the appropriate like speed roughly. I'm just gonna try and stay right here instead of thinking I gotta run 520 pace because of X, Y, and Z." So
Mm.
I think that's important in terms of hydration. The general rule of thumb is you just got to drink a lot of water. And then also in really hot, humid when you're sweating, depending on how much you're running, like, add in some electrolytes. Will help, but you don't have to go overboard. You'll generally replenish those for the most part, unless we're doing like a marathon, ultra marathon type deal.
Interesting. I wouldn't have thought. I think people probably overdo the electrolytes, which your former athlete Meredith Parmley told me in an upcoming episode. But anyway, this is great. A quick index card recap. It's gonna suck when you're running in the heat. Understand it's gonna take time to adapt. Steve called this the death period, which I like. I'm gonna steal that. Slow down, ditch your watch, go by effort. We did a coach up not long ago in RPE. You can use that rate of perceived exertion rather than time. Uh, Again, use time instead of miles. Instead of going for a 5 mile run, go for maybe 45 minutes. Take breaks, use water, do fewer hard workouts. Understand that you are training your total stress load. So heat is adding stress. So even if you feel you are not training as fast or as high volume as you were doing before, you could still be working your total stress load because the heat adds an element of stress. That is all for today. Thank you, Steve, for these. If anyone's going out for a hot workout, hopefully you can use them. We'll be back with another later in the week. Then, as always, farewell.